In the far corner of the Black Hollow County Museum, behind a warped oak door that most visitors mistake for a supply closet, four towering glass cylinders stand in silent formation. Inside them, perfectly preserved, are the Thompson Quadruplets. Identical faces pale as porcelain, hair combed neatly as if for Sunday service, eyes closed in what could be mistaken for sleep. The air is thick with the scent of dust and old varnish, but beneath it lingers something colder, almost metallic. Locals insist the display has been there for as long as they can remember, yet no one recalls a time when the children were unveiled for the public. Their existence is an open secret, murmured about in diners and church basements, always with a glance over the shoulder. They say the Thompsons were cursed. They say the children never truly died, and they say the glass was never meant to hold them forever. Black Hollow was the kind of place where time moved like cold molasses, where the same faces passed you on the same dirt road for decades, and questions had a way of dying before they were asked. After the Thompson Quadruplets were declared dead, the entire town seemed to agree, without ever speaking, that it was better not to know too much. Newspapers printed a single clipped obituary, no photographs, no cause of death. The church bells rang once, then fell silent. Even the gossiping women who lingered in the general store lowered their voices when the name Thompson slipped out. In a town where everyone knew everyone's business, this silence was its own scandal, heavier than any rumor. Outsiders thought it was fear. The truth was worse. It was complicity. They all worked in the Thompson factory, drew wages from Silas Thompson's hand, and no one in Black Hollow ever risked offending the man who owned their lives. The winter of 1888 arrived with a blizzard so fierce it buried fences and froze the river solid within hours. It was in the heart of that storm, as lanterns flickered in the Thompson estate, that Eleanor Thompson gave birth to four identical daughters. The midwife, pale and trembling from the cold, swore she had never seen such stillness in newborns. They neither wailed nor thrashed, only stared with wide, unblinking eyes as if assessing the world they had entered. Word spread quickly through Black Hollow, carried on the wind like frostbite. Four living mirrors born on the same breath. Doctors from Boston called it a miracle. The townsfolk whispered it was an omen. Some claimed the children never cried, even in the following days. In a winter where livestock froze standing and men died shoveling their own roofs, the Thompson Quadruplets became a strange, bright flame, fascination and dread wrapped in the same swaddling cloth. The Thompson estate loomed over Black Hollow like a watchtower, its brick walls and iron gates separating the family from the lives they owned. Inside, Patriarch Silas Thompson ruled with the precision of a factory clock, every action measured, every word weighted. His wife, Eleanor, rarely left the upstairs rooms. When she did, she moved like a shadow, her eyes fixed somewhere far beyond the people she passed. The Quadruplets were raised in this hush. Servants whispered of lessons that lasted from dawn until the lamps were lit, of meals taken in rigid silence, of nursery windows nailed shut. No other children were allowed inside, and when the girls were seen from the gates, it was always the same, standing in perfect alignment, hands folded, watching without waving. To the town, the Thompsons were a picture of discipline and refinement. But behind those locked doors, the children's lives seemed less like a family's and more like an experiment in control. Dr. Horace Bellamy first arrived at the Thompson estate on a snow-bright morning, summoned not for illness but for observation. From the moment he entered the nursery, a chill settled in his bones that had nothing to do with winter. The Quadruplets sat at a small wooden table, identical dresses, identical ribbons, identical expressions that did not shift when he approached. When he placed his stethoscope against the first girl's chest, 3 others inhaled in perfect unison. His notes, at first clinical, soon turned uneasy. They blink together. They speak in the same tone, with the same choice of words. I feel not as though I am treating 4 patients, but one being in 4 bodies. Bellamy's fascination wrestled with an instinctive dread, and by his 3rd visit, his handwriting grew cramped, fevered. He had studied strange cases before, but nothing like this. Something about the Thompson children seemed less born than made. In the summer of 1893, a traveling photographer arrived in Black Hollow with a promise to capture the Thompson Quadruplets in their rare public appearance. The family consented, seeing an opportunity to showcase their miraculous children to the world, perhaps to silence rumors swirling beneath the surface. But when the images were developed, the town recoiled. The children's eyes, eerily pale and glassy, reflected no light, no warmth. Their bodies sat rigid, every finger frozen in perfect symmetry. Some claimed that even the shadows in the photographs appeared unnatural, stretching too long, too sharp, like an echo of something unseen. Whispered rumors grew that the photographer had captured not living children but statues, or worse, vessels. The photographs were quickly withdrawn from public view, replaced with vague explanations about poor exposure and childlike stillness. Yet, beneath the official story, a deeper unease spread. What was the true nature of the Thompsons' daughters? Workers in the Thompson textile factory were used to secrecy, locked doors, whispered orders, and shipments arriving under cover of darkness. But in the late 1890s, rumors began to spread about barrels of strange, pungent chemicals being unloaded near the estate, their contents never explained. The factory was experimenting with new dyes, officials claimed, but some workers suspected something far darker. One foreman later recalled overhearing a hushed conversation between Silas Thompson and an unknown man about preserving the future. The chemicals, faintly sweet and corrosive, were rumored to be used not just for fabric, but on the children themselves. As the quadruplets grew, their unnatural stillness and unchanging appearance led some to wonder if they were part of some grotesque alchemy, caught between life and death by the twisted ambition of a family desperate to control time itself. Unlike other children who succumbed quickly to the relentless coughs and fevers sweeping through Black Hollow, the Thompson Quadruplets remained untouched by sickness. On the surface, their unyielding health was a marvel, whispered as a blessing from Providence, but beneath this facade lay a darker truth. Dr. Bellamy's private notes revealed his mounting suspicion. The girls' bodies were being altered, fortified against decay by means unknown. Diets were regimented and strange powders administered in silence, while the children's pale skin grew unnaturally smooth, almost waxen. Townsfolk speculated in hushed tones that the quadruplets were no longer quite human, that their resilience was less a gift and more a cage forged by chemicals and cold will. As illness ravaged the community, the Thompson daughters' eerie vitality became a haunting symbol, a reminder that survival at any cost may come with a price too terrible to bear. On a crisp autumn afternoon, the Thompson Quadruplets made a rare public appearance at the church's annual harvest picnic. Families gathered under the golden canopy of leaves. Children ran and laughed, yet the girls sat apart, motionless on a worn wooden bench. Witnesses later recalled their unsettling presence, faces pale and fixed, eyes locked forward but seemingly seeing beyond the world around them. They neither ate nor spoke, but faint, synchronized smiles played on their lips, as if they were actors frozen in a timeless scene. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Were they mere children, or something else entirely? The stark contrast between the carefree joy of the townsfolk and the quadruplets' haunting stillness deepened the unease that gripped Black Hollow, foreshadowing darker secrets buried beneath the autumn leaves. In the chilling winter of 1896, the fragile balance surrounding the Thompson Quadruplets shattered when Abigail, the eldest by mere minutes, vanished without a trace for 2 harrowing days. Panic rippled through the household and the town alike. When she returned, something was irrevocably changed. Her eyes, once reflective pools of icy blue, now stared blankly ahead, void of recognition or warmth. Servants whispered of hushed arguments between Silas and Eleanor, their voices sharp with fear and desperation. A rare fragment of overheard conversation revealed Silas's chilling resolve. "We cannot let them be seen like this again." Abigail's disappearance marked the beginning of a slow unraveling, where the boundaries between life, death, and something far more unnatural began to blur. The town's collective silence grew heavier, weighed down by secrets too terrible to name. Dr. Bellamy's growing unease finally reached a breaking point. After months of observing the Thompson children's unnatural behaviors and strange family rituals, he dared to confront Silas with questions no man of his standing wished to hear. The reply was swift and cold. Bellamy was dismissed from his role as the family physician, his services no longer required. Yet before he left the estate for good, Bellamy confided to a trusted friend that he had witnessed more than medical anomalies. He had seen glass tanks assembled in the shadowed cellar, their purpose chillingly unclear. His private letters spoke of forced complicity, of experiments that blurred the line between scientific curiosity and grotesque obsession. The doctor's retreat was not escape but exile, as if the Thompsons sought to bury not only their children's secrets, but anyone who dared seek the truth. One stormy night, long after the sun had vanished beneath a curtain of clouds, neighbors of the Thompson estate were awakened by an unnatural, eerie glow emanating from the windows. A cold blue-green light pulsed rhythmically, casting long shadows that danced like restless spirits across the frost-covered ground. Those brave enough to peer closer swore they saw silhouettes moving inside, 4 indistinct shapes standing motionless, yet somehow alive. When dawn broke, the estate returned to its usual quiet, but the children were never seen outdoors again. The glow became a whispered legend, a spectral warning of the horrors hidden behind the shuttered windows. To Black Hollow, it was a sign that the Thompsons had crossed a threshold, plunging into realms of preservation and control that defied nature, sanity, and perhaps even the divine. For 2 long years, the Thompson estate seemed swallowed by shadow. Its windows remained firmly shuttered, blocking any glimpse of the secrets held within. Deliveries arrived with unsettling regularity, crates heavy with unmarked bottles, strange powders, and preserved specimens. Servants came and went like ghosts, each departing with haunted eyes and silent lips. Rumors spread that no one stayed long because the estate itself felt alive, watching, waiting. Black Hollow's residents whispered of strange sounds echoing through the night. Faint tapping, distant cries, or sometimes an unnatural stillness that pressed against their windows. The once vibrant home had become a tomb of secrets, a fortress of silence where time seemed to halt, mirroring the eerie stasis of the quadruplets themselves, trapped in a cruel limbo between life and death. In the spring of 1900, the town awoke to a brief, stark announcement. The Thompson Quadruplets had died suddenly, victims of a mysterious and unnamed illness. No details were given, no cause ever recorded. The local newspaper printed a brief obituary. 4 names, 4 ages, and a collective shroud of grief that felt rehearsed and hollow. No funeral was held, no flowers laid. The townsfolk, bound by fear and respect for Silas Thompson's power, swallowed their doubts and moved on, but the silence was deafening. The children who had once been the town's eerie obsession became ghostly legends, their deaths as inexplicable as their lives. Behind closed doors, some whispered that the illness was merely a cover, a way to hide the truth of what had been done to them. The official story closed a chapter but opened an abyss of unanswered questions that would haunt Black Hollow for decades. In the cold spring of 1902, disaster struck the Thompson estate in the form of a devastating fire. Flames engulfed the sprawling mansion, tearing through it, as timber and brick with relentless fury. Firefighters who rushed to the scene spoke later of an unsettling experience. Amid the roar of destruction, they heard the sharp, haunting sound of glass shattering from the basement below. Attempts to descend were halted abruptly by armed men guarding the property, their faces set like stone. The official reports dismissed the basement noises as broken bottles or collapsing shelving, but rumors spread quickly through Black Hollow. Whispers suggested the fire was no accident, that something inside the estate was deliberately destroyed or hidden away. The fire reduced much of the home to smoldering ruins, but beneath the ashes, secrets endured, especially those locked inside the glass that had held the Thompson children suspended between worlds. After Silas Thompson's death in 1911, the estate's remaining contents were quietly sold off in a subdued auction that attracted few outsiders. Among the dust-covered relics and faded furniture, crates labeled with cryptic medical inventory numbers changed hands without question. Some bidders noticed fragments of broken glass hidden among the packing straw, thin shards with an unnatural gleam that seemed out of place in a household sale. Rumors circulated that these crates once held chemicals or equipment used in unspeakable experiments, yet no official record detailed their purpose. The Thompson family's legacy was being dismantled piece by piece, yet the true story remained locked away, concealed beneath layers of silence and denial. What was sold at auction was only the surface. The darkness behind it continued to cast a long, cold shadow over Black Hollow's history. In 1923, during renovations of the county courthouse, where some Thompson estate belongings had been temporarily stored, a hidden door was discovered behind a false wall. Beyond it lay a small, windowless room sealed tight for decades. Inside stood 4 towering glass cylinders, each containing one of the Thompson Quadruplets. The children's forms were perfectly preserved, suspended in a strange, translucent fluid that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Their faces remained serene, as if caught in an eternal slumber, but their pale skin had an otherworldly glow. The discovery shocked officials and townsfolk alike, reigniting whispers that the children had never truly left the world of the living. Questions swirled. How had they been preserved so flawlessly? What purpose did these glass tombs serve? And who had maintained this hidden chamber for all those years? The truth was buried deep, locked behind glass and silence. Faced with the discovery of the glass cylinders holding the Thompson Quadruplets, county officials found themselves in a moral and legal quagmire. Some advocated for a discreet burial to finally lay the children to rest and close the chapter on the Macabre saga. Others pushed for a scientific examination, hoping to uncover the secrets behind the extraordinary preservation. Yet fear of scandal and the influence of lingering Thompson loyalists stifled any decisive action. Ultimately, the children were quietly relocated to a storage wing of the local museum, shrouded in secrecy and rarely mentioned in official records. The museum staff were instructed to treat the display with solemn respect, but to avoid public attention. Thus, the quadruplets remained locked away, living relics of a twisted past frozen in time, their story told only in whispers and shadows. In 1932, a small team of medical researchers was granted limited access to examine the preserved Thompson Quadruplets. Their findings were both fascinating and deeply unsettling. The children's bodies showed traces of early embalming chemicals, but alongside these were compounds unknown to contemporary science, substances that appeared to halt decomposition almost entirely. The researchers noted the unnerving preservation of skin elasticity and the soft, lifelike quality of facial features, as if the children had been paused in mid-breath rather than dead for decades. This discovery hinted at deliberate intervention, blurring the line between life and death. The team left with more questions than answers, haunted by the possibility that the Thompsons had unlocked a cruel secret, the power to imprison human life in glass, defying nature and morality in equal measure. Dr. Bellamy's final letter surfaced years after his exile, revealing truths he had long feared to speak aloud. Penned in shaky handwriting, the letter detailed his forced involvement in Silas Thompson's dark experiments, treatments meant not to heal, but to halt the ravages of time on the children's fragile bodies. Bellamy described how chemical concoctions were administered under duress, how he was coerced into perfecting a preservation method that blurred the boundary between life and death. His words betrayed a man broken by guilt, haunted by the faces of the quadruplets frozen in unnatural stillness. The letter ended with a chilling warning. What we did was no miracle. It was a sin against nature, a pact with darkness that can never be undone. Bellamy's confession cast a grim shadow over the entire saga, revealing the twisted human cost behind the glass tombs. Decades after the quadruplets' eerie photographs were withdrawn from public view, the original negatives resurfaced in the possession of the now elderly photographer who had captured their image in 1893. In a rare confession, he revealed that the photos had been deliberately altered before release. What he saw through his lens that day was far more disturbing. The children's eyes didn't follow the light. Instead, they reflected an unnatural void, cold and hollow. Their skin appeared waxy, almost translucent, as if the girls were less living beings and more crafted dolls. He spoke of a moment when the shutter clicked, and he felt a sudden chill, as if the camera had captured a fragment of something beyond mortal comprehension. The photographer's confession deepened the mystery, suggesting that the quadruplets were never truly alive in the way the world understands life, a notion that would haunt Black Hollow's whispered history for generations. A surviving Thompson relative, a distant cousin named Margaret, vehemently dismissed the dark tales surrounding the quadruplets. In interviews and letters, she insisted the stories were nothing more than rural superstition, fueled by grief and gossip. The children were buried properly, she claimed, her voice steady but tinged with defensive sorrow. The glass displays, fabrications by those wanting to sensationalize a family tragedy. Yet beneath her denials lurked a palpable unease, as if even she could not entirely escape the shadows cast by her ancestors. Her refusal to acknowledge the truth only deepened the divide between the town's official history and the whispered secrets that clung to every corner of Black Hollow. In trying to protect her family's name, Margaret inadvertently became a guardian of silence, perpetuating the mystery rather than dispelling it. The museum that housed the Thompson Quadruplets glass cylinder operated under a veil of quiet discretion. Staff members, sworn to secrecy, avoided discussing the exhibit with visitors, their answers curt and rehearsed. Requests to view the preserved children were routinely declined, cloaked in polite refusals and vague explanations about preservation concerns. Yet, among the staff circulated stories whispered in the dead of night, tales of faint tapping sounds emanating from the covered cylinders, shadows flickering in the corner of the eye, and an unshakable feeling of being watched. Some claimed the air grew inexplicably colder near the display, as if the children's presence was not confined to glass, but extended into the room itself. The museum's silence became a haunting echo, reinforcing the sense that some mysteries are best left undisturbed, yet impossible to forget. Among the faded documents buried deep within the Thompson factory archives, a series of cryptic notes surfaced, hinting at connections far beyond Black Hollow. These pages spoke of experimental chemical compounds developed under contract with military officials, intended to preserve human tissue for extended periods, a chilling precursor to what modern science would later explore. The notes referenced trials, failures, and a singular success that blurred ethical boundaries. The Thompson Quadruplets, it seemed, were not merely victims of family obsession, but part of an early and secretive human preservation experiment. This revelation cast the children's story in a new, darker light. Were they sacrificed on the altar of progress, their innocence exploited in pursuit of forbidden knowledge? The factory's whispers echoed with the unspoken question: how much did the world owe to these frozen lives, and at what cost? The glass cylinders stood silent in their shadowed corner, the quadruplets' pale faces forever frozen in a haunting stillness. They seemed to watch without seeing, trapped between life and death, innocence and something far more sinister. Their preservation was neither mercy nor cruelty. It was a grotesque refusal to let go, an eternal pause on the boundary of humanity. As the dust settled over their forgotten story, a chilling question lingered. Were they victims of love twisted into obsession, or pawns in a merciless experiment that defied nature itself? The townsfolk's silence echoed the moral ambiguity of their fate, an unsettling reminder that sometimes the darkest horrors hide not in monstrous acts, but in the desperate, fragile attempts to escape the inevitable. The Thompson Quadruplets remain locked in their glass prisons, their gaze haunting the fragile line between compassion and cruelty, forever inviting us to confront what it truly means to be human,